I could go to sleep. I was in Vegas all last week and I got back late last night. Business from morning through midnight. Exhausted. I do business development and sales for a software company. So I travel all over the place. Yeah, we have most of them as customers. But that's a separate division. We have a senior division with food service division, hotels, resorts, we do. I don't suffer. Again, we have a cruise specialist in our team, but we have Royal Caribbean, Carnival, and some of the cruise ships. Agilicis. You would have never known it. It's publicly held though. It's a big company. Yeah. 16 years I've been there, but I've been in this industry. I do. Yes.
I know, I thought you were
I'm telling you, I'm trying to get a dog that I know that unless I could travel with her. No, I know, and that's what I keep telling people, you know, because really when I travel, I'm on the plane. But when I go to New York, when I go but my meetings are usually 3 to 4 hours in a day. The rest of the time I'm working on a job, just like I'm working at home. So, yes, I would get, I had a Bichon passed about 2 years ago. I loved it. That's not typical Christians. No, they're usually very protective. I think you brought yours up well because that is not typical. That's not usual. And that's part of the problem as well as getting a puppy, right? But although I do believe that bringing up a puppy that way would make a puppy, like as opposed to having to change. I'm gonna wait. I just bought a house unexpectedly last week, so I think I'll. Well, thank you. I have my condo, but I decided to move to a home, partially because I wanted a dog. In Marabella. It's on PGA, around the corner from PGA Resort. Yes. I know Atlantis. Yeah, I had friends up there a few years ago. It's a great location. Right now I'm only like 10 minutes from the airport, which I do love because I'm out of it. This along the beach. And I'll have a home and I'll be able to go outside. Well, in the condo, it's like sometimes it's too, and once my dog died, it's almost too much trouble to go down the elevator unless you're walking up. I'll just work some more. I'll watch reality. See you ladies after. Oh, thank you. I am singing. I am. For whatever little voice I have left. I am singing. How are you? What? I know you do. I know. Okay. It was our sales manager. So I went back to this meeting. Vegas, baby. I got in the president's Yeah. They're going to learn. But it's in courses. Yeah, it Hawaii was over. And I've been there because I grew up in California. I think my 27. It doesn't have the same texture. It's a lovely and then when you're there, it's ridiculous. Oh no,
Southwest Congregation of Palm Beaches. I'm Lorraine Bromberg, and I'll be your worship assistant this morning. Our progressive, welcoming, inclusive, and judgment-free congregation is a liberal, religious community of diverse and free-thinking individuals. We come together to see truth, spiritual growth, and social justice. As people, we learn, love, share, and serve together. We welcome all into our family. Our call to worship this morning is a reading entitled Crystal of Creation by Reverend Tess Baumberger. I will read it, and you can find the words in the order of service if you'd like to follow along. If there is a heaven, it is right here, right now, in this particular arrangement of nature, this happening of earth, moon, and star, this constellation of instants, this latent moment, this flash of recognition, this particle of time. If there is a God, it is all around us, everywhere, in every blinking eye, in every pulsing possibility, in every ugliness, every beauty, in every wholeness, every part. If there is an axiom in the universe, it is life, it is love, it is death, it is hatred, it is wanting and needing to be in this crystal of creation. Amen.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Dan Lambert, and I serve this congregation as the ministerial leader, and I am super glad to see all of you here today. It is a wonderful, wonderful weekend. 5th of May, Cinco de Mayo, which comes every year after May the 4th be with you. And so it's a very spectacular weekend. We have Sunfest in town. We have all kinds of exciting things going on. So it's kind of a big time. That's super cool. Each week when we get together as we begin our worship, we start by lighting our chalice flame. The chalice is a long-standing symbol of Unitarian Universalism, and it helps us realize that as we come together from our various walks of life and everything that's happened, we come together during this hour as one body. So I invite you to stand and sing together, Come, Come, whoever you are, and then remain standing as we recite our affirmation. Please stand. Thank you. Please be seated. Well, we love to welcome visitors with us each week, and we really enjoy getting to know some of the new folks who come and decide to hang out with us. If this happens to be your first time with us, we'd love to know who you are, and so we invite you, if you'd like to stand and introduce yourself by simply telling us your name, where you're from, and maybe why you decided to visit with us today. This is totally optional. If you don't feel comfortable standing, you don't have to. But we'd love to hear who you are so that we can greet you and get to know you a little bit after the service. Do we have any first-time visitors who would like to stand and say hi to us this morning? There's one back there. I see that hand. The microphone will come around to you so that you can speak and we can all hear you.
Good morning. My name is Mary Ellen Menicello. I'm a UU from Connecticut, and I'm visiting with my very close friend of 40 years, Carol Baxter.
Welcome, Mary Ellen. Nice to have you. Anyone else like to say hello this morning? All right, well, regardless, we're very glad that you're here, and after this service, we have a social hour that we would love to invite you to stay and hang out for, and during that time we get a chance to sit down and get to know each other, enjoy some coffee or snacks or whatever it is that you'd like that we have. And it's a nice, relaxing time where you can learn more about us and we can learn more about you. Also, each week we pass through the aisles our attendance pads so that we can know who's here and know who's missing. And if you're a visitor, we would love for you to just write your name and some contact information so that we know how to reach out and say hello to you. So the ushers will bring those on the outside of the aisle. You can write your name if you wish and then pass it towards the middle, and then they'll come collect that in just a few more minutes. So that'll be coming at this point. Also, today is the first Sunday of the month. Who knows what that means here? Birthdays and anniversaries. Now, someone pointed out to me that my excitement in singing the Happy Birthday Anniversary song is a little bit confusing and tongue-ties some folks. So they suggested, hey, how about Happy Birthday-versary? So if you would like to sing Happy Birthday-versary instead of Happy Birthday Anniversary, you're totally free to. We're UUs. You can sing whatever it is you want to, or not sing, or ignore me, or whatever it is. So who has a birthday or an anniversary in the month of May? Please raise your hand. We have some flowers for you today. So keep your hands up, please, and let's sing happy whatever it is you'd like to sing. Happy birthday anniversary to you. Happy birthday anniversary to you. Happy birthday anniversary. Happy anniversary. Henry? Happy anniversary to you. Woo! I love that we do that every month now. I think it's such a cool way to recognize folks, and plus, who doesn't like flowers? That's pretty cool. Just another kind of note that I happened to see this week, if you live in North Palm Beach or in the area, maybe you saw that one of our folks who spoke here last fall and has deep ties to our congregation, Susan Tiedemann Bickle, got a really big honor this week. Did anybody see that in the news? She was named National Teacher of the Year by the American Teachers of Chemistry. So, yeah, that's a pretty big deal. So if you know her or have a way to reach out to her and say congrats, I would encourage you to do that. So it's great that we have such amazing educators in our community teaching our kids. So I thought that was really cool and just wanted to share that. Our first hymn this morning is number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. It's one of our favorites that we always sing robustly, so I love that we're doing that. So I invite you to stand if you'd like and sing number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. I'd like to invite Barbara Hatzfeld to come up and share our Social Justice Minute. A few months ago, we did food packing for Bell Glade students, and our turn is coming up for that again, and Barbara's going to share a little bit more about that.
For a number of years now, we find that our friends and neighbors out there in the glade, particularly those who are farm workers, do not have food when they're not in school. So it has become a project of this congregation, sponsored by Justice Action Ministry Committee, to do the food packing. On Saturday, May 11th, which is coming up, we're going to pack the meals for these school children. Then the school board will distribute them for us. These children, as I said, are without food during their school break, so this will help them through the summer. I'm asking everyone to come at 10 a.m. Anybody who can help set up, show up at 9:30. We need cardboard boxes to pack the food. So if any of you are able to get some boxes, please bring them along with you. This is an activity, as I said, is sponsored by the Justice Action Ministry Committee. The money used for this particular packing is from your JAM grants of 2018, 2019, which we've already collected. How many of you think you can come?
Oh, look at that.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
See you Saturday.
It's a great activity for families or folks. There's a lot of things to do, and there's not a whole lot of heavy lifting involved, and so it's good to see so many hands up. I'll actually be at the Florida UU Ministers Retreat this week, and so I won't be able to be there. So.
We hope to finish by noon, so please don't think we're doing the whole day, sorry.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. So start at 10-ish or so and finish by noonish or so. It's not an all-day commitment. Thank you for pointing that out, Barbara. Good, that's wonderful. At this time, we'd like to pause and have a moment of silence and invite you to light a candle. During this time, we like to pause, think about what's happening in our lives, our community, our job, our neighborhood, our family, our world, and to lift that up to the universe so that those burdens and those joys can be released or be shared, whatever the case may be for you. After a moment, Paylene will play the piano, and when you hear the music, we invite you to come to the candle table that's here on my left and your right to light a candle in honor, in memory, in joy, in praise, in concern, whatever it is that may suit your situation. So we invite you to have a moment of silence at this time.
are generous in both spirit and act. Each week, we take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that supports this congregation and our many ministries. If you prefer, you can give electronically through our website. Each week, we also collect non-perishable items for our local food banks in a large basket here in front. If you are visiting with us today, please do not feel obligated to give. Your presence is gift enough. As the ushers come forward to pass the baskets, your donations will be most gratefully received.
Thank you so much. That is one of Tessa's favorite songs. So she thinks you did that just for her. Of course. I'm just going to let her keep on thinking that. Growing up in rural northern Indiana, one of the most prominent features of the landscape was all of the farms with big barns everywhere. Anybody else grew up in a rural area with barns? As a high schooler, one of our favorite things to do was to go exploring and climbing in the barns and on the barns. And I remember one particular night, it would have been my senior year, prom night. we went to Max Barger's farm after prom to hang out for a little bit and then to have an early morning or a late night breakfast, however you want to term it, whenever you stay up all night long for prom. So we got to Max's and changed out of our dress clothes into casual clothes and went out to Max's barn. Max's family had a very large farm, so they had a very large barn. And we climbed to the top of the barn, went out the window and climbed up on the very top of the roof. This particular early May evening was just a beautiful, beautiful May night in rural Indiana. Warm, not a cloud in the sky, and out in rural areas, you don't have light pollution, so you can see stars forever. And so there were 8 of us sitting on the roof of this barn, and we started talking about how far is forever. We laid back on the roof of the barn and we looked out on the stars and said, how far does that go? And we spent, I don't know, it seemed like hours talking about imponderable life as a teenager. And obviously that memory has always stuck with me. And I had many of those types of conversations as a teenager, sometimes on the roof of Max Barger's barn, sometimes sitting on the hood of a car, sometimes laying out in somebody's lawn, looking up at that very, very clear, very, very deep Indiana sky. For the next 6 weeks, I'd like to invite you to join me sitting on the top of Max Barger's barn and talking about some of life's imponderables. Some topics that we know there's really not great answers for, but we think about them anyway. And so that's where we're headed for the next 6 weeks as we sit on Max Barger's barn talking about life's imponderables. Today we're going to start the series by starting where you really have to start when you talk about imponderables, and that is origins. Where did everything come from? Why is there something rather than nothing? Why are we here? And what is the purpose of life? Any fans of the TV show Big Bang Theory out there? A few. All right, good. It's one of the shows that Tess and I actually record and watch weekly. There's not very many of things on TV that we enjoy, but that's one of them. If you ever pay attention to the theme song, it's written by and performed by a band that goes by the name of Bare Naked Ladies. They're actually not naked and they're not ladies. They just think it's a cool name. But this is how the theme song goes. Our whole universe was in a hot, dense state. Then nearly 14 billion years ago, expansion started. Wait, the earth began to cool, the autotrophs began to drool, Neanderthals developed tools, we built a wall, we built the pyramids, math, science, history, unraveling the mysteries that all started with the Big Bang. Since the dawn of man is really not that long, as every galaxy was formed in less time than it takes to sing this song, a fraction of a second and the elements were made. The bipeds stood up straight, the dinosaurs all met their fate. They tried to leap, but they were late. They all died, they froze their asses off. The oceans and Pangea, see you wouldn't want to be ya, set in motion by the same Big Bang. It all started with the Big Bang. It's expanding ever outward, but one day it will cause the stars to go the other way, collapsing ever inward. We won't be here, it won't hurt. Our best and brightest figure that it'll take an even bigger bang. Australopithecus would really have been sick of us, debating how we're here. They're catching deer, we're catching viruses. Religion or astronomy, Descartes or Deuteronomy, it all started with a Big Bang. Music and mythology, Einstein and astrology, it all started with a Big Bang. Or did it? The question of where everything came from and why we are here was first posed by humans millennia ago. This is not a new question. This is a lifelong quest for humankind. I'm not convinced we're any closer to answering any of those questions, scientifically or philosophically today, than we ever have been. There are a lot of ideas posted. There are a lot of philosophical questions and theoretical questions that have been postulated about this, but there's still an awful lot we don't know. And some things we'll probably never know. The Big Bang is where most scientists tell us this universe originated roughly 13.7 billion years ago. Science can propose theories, but when it comes to origins, a study of science called cosmology, science can't really prove anything. There's no way to recreate it and test it in a lab to go over and over and over again. But first of all, I think it's important to recognize this fact. The Big Bang itself wasn't actually very big, right? It started with the tiniest pieces of matter called a singularity, where all time and space and matter comes into one in the tiniest fractal of being. Second of all, there was no bang, because in space, there's no sound, right? Third, the Big Bang Theory doesn't tell you what banged, when it banged, or how it banged. It just says that it banged. So the Big Bang Theory is really a big misnomer. It's not accurately named at all. Honestly, though, it's mind-bending to think about everything and how it had to be just perfect for things to be set in motion, for everything to exist that does exist, for the earth to exist in the way that it does, and for us to even be here today. The late theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking, who died just last year, in fact, put it this way: if the rate of expansion 1 second after the Big Bang had been smaller by even 1 part in 100,000 million, it would have recollapsed before it reached its present size. On the other hand, if it had been greater by a part in 1 million, the universe would have expanded too rapidly for stars and planets to form. Mind-blowing. Everything had to happen just perfectly for the universe to exist in the way it does, and for us to be here in the way it does. Speaking of imponderables, have you ever thought about how everything in the history of the world had to happen just exactly the way it did for you personally to exist? Think about all the things that had to happen for your parents to meet, for them to, do whatever they did to create you in whatever situation that happened to occur, and for you to meet the people you did, to live in the places you did, to have the experiences you did that led you to the point where we are all here together in this room today. If one tiny thing was different in the history of the world, in the history of humanity, in your life, you wouldn't be sitting here today, and you might not exist at all. Things have to happen in a certain order, in a certain way, for us to turn out the way we did. So this leads to some other imponderables. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why is there something rather than nothing? Well, this is really a matter of philosophy, and even theoretical physicists say that what experienced or what existed before our current universe was some type of energy, and inevitably that energy was going to go somewhere, and it was going to expand. And so the reason from a scientific standpoint there's something rather than nothing is because energy requires it to be so. From a theological standpoint, especially the Abrahamic traditions say that the God who exists, that created everything, is a creative God, and so inevitably that creative God had to create. If you are a creative being, you create. And so either way, whether you look at it theologically or atheologically, the universe exists because eventually it had to, whether that's from a scientific point of view or from a theological point of view. There's also the theory called the multiverse theory of what existed before the Big Bang was a series of Big Bangs that came in and out of wormholes and black holes that basically universes forever have expanded and collapsed into black holes and expanded and collapsed and expanded and collapsed. That's called the multiverse theory. And that this current universe in which we live is just one of an infinite string of universes that existed before this one and that will exist long after this one. How do you prove any of this? Well, you really can't. Which is why folks from religious persuasions say that it can't be true. If science can't prove it, then we should dismiss it and say God did it. The danger here is that this is called a God of the gaps theology. God exists in scientific gaps of knowledge. So people who say there's no scientific explanation for it, therefore God had to do it, are using the gaps in knowledge to put God in that place. The problem is that through time, as scientific knowledge expands, those gaps get smaller and smaller. And so this God of the gaps theory gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So some people kind of play the middle ground and say, well, God put all of it in motion, and everything that's happened is divinely guided evolution, theological evolution, if you will. Others say that may be true, but God set it in motion and stepped back and watched the rest of it happen. This is called the divine watchmaker theory. That if you're a deist, you might buy into something like that. So whether everything that exists because of some purely physical experience, because there was matter and matter created the universe, or whether there's some divine being, higher power, God, organization, love, providence, whatever you want to call it, it's really impossible to know. So what does this mean for why we're here? What's the purpose of life? What does it mean for us if all of life simply began by some organism crawling out of primordial ooze? The fact is that I want to encourage you today to think about it in this way. We don't need a God or a religion or even a philosophy to have true meaning in our lives. It's not important to know why we're here in order to make meaning. We construct our own meaning in life by how we choose to live, by the kind of person we choose to be and to become. Atheist author Jerry Coyne puts it this way. He's an evolutionary biologist and author of many books, including Faith versus Fact, Why Science and Religion Are Incompatible. I disagree with him strongly in this book, by the way. But this is an important quote. The way I find meaning, this is Coyne speaking, the way I find meaning is the way that most people find meaning, even religious ones, which is to get pleasure and significance from your job, from your loved ones, from your avocation, from art, literature, and music. People like me don't worry about what it's all about in a cosmic sense because we know it isn't about anything. It's what we make of this transitory existence that matters. I do agree with him in that. If there is no great intelligence that created everything that gives life meaning, then why are we here? And theists will ask, Christians will ask the question especially, where do our ethics and morals come from if they don't come from God? Well, they come from community. In every community, every tribe, every people group that's ever been discovered around the world since people have been traveling, there's been some type of ethical standard in that community. Yes, it's also true that almost always there's been some type of religious experience in that community as well, though it's been expressed in many different ways. But wherever there are people, there have been the same type of rules. We've talked before about how some version of the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, exists in every single culture and in every single religion. In every culture, there are rules or prohibitions against murdering someone else, against stealing, taking someone else's property, about how to treat each other. There is no need for a cosmic father figure to tell us how to behave and how to treat each other. I'll also tell you that our meaning for life does not exist and is not found in our checkbooks and our retirement accounts. It's not in our garages. It doesn't decorate our homes or hang in our closet. Meaning comes from how we love one another, how we help one another. Meaning comes from how we help humanity. Our meaning comes from the life and legacy we construct in the years between birth and death, however many or however few those years may be. Our meaning comes from how we appreciate the people in our lives, how we appreciate the beauty of nature, and the passions that drive us. So I encourage you to not look for the meaning of life from any external entity, whether it be from a God, from other people, from a religion, or even from a spiritual practice. The Dalai Lama once said that if you go to the top of a mountain to meditate and you find the meaning of life there, it's because you brought the meaning of life with you. No matter how the universe came into being, no matter why there is something rather than nothing, we are all our own meaning makers. It doesn't matter how we got here. It doesn't matter how the universe came into being. It doesn't matter if there was some great divine mind that made it happen, or if it was simply a matter of eventual physics making it happen. Our role as humans is to be a good person. Our meaning in life, our purpose in life, is how we treat each other. It's how we love each other. It's how we create justice in the world. That's where our meaning comes from. We all have a role to play in that. We all have something different we can do. We all have our gifts, our abilities, our talents, our passions. Our meaning in life comes from using those to create a better place. Our meaning in life comes from the legacy we leave behind because of the impact we make on the lives of the people we touch. It doesn't come from some cosmic figure telling us what we should do or shouldn't do. When I was going through Bible college and seminary and in the throes of working in ministry and evangelical Christianity, the message to our teenagers and to our young adults was that God has a purpose for your life, and your job is to find that purpose. And that you need to set aside your own passions, your own desires, your own talents, and find God's purpose. From the very first time I heard that, I bucked against it because it doesn't make any sense. If there's such a thing as a loving God, why would he give you talents and passions and abilities and say, no, that's not what I want you to do. I want you to do this other thing that's my purpose for you. That's a cruel God. That's not a loving God. In the same way, we always used to teach kids, well, and some still do, that when it comes to love, there's the one. You ever heard of the concept of the one? Your job in life is to find the one person that God has designed perfectly for you. Out of 7 billion people, your job is to keep your eyes open and to spy around and to look and to listen for the one perfect match for your life. What kind of cruel God would do that? That makes no sense. And how successful are we at doing that? Look at the divorce rate. And even with the marriages that do last 40, 50 years, look at how unhappy many of them are. No, I always told my students at the Christian colleges where I taught, because this would come up a lot. You know, college students like to date, they're trying to find a potential husband and wife. I always would tell them, there's not one person out there for you. The fact is that even in this room, even at this university, there are literally dozens of people that you could meet and marry and have a wonderfully happy life with. It's not a matter of finding the one. It's a matter of understanding who you are to the point where you find the person who complements who you are, who shares your passion in life, your direction in life, who wants to go the same places that you do. And quite honestly, even then, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, that may change. And having that perfect mate that you're with for life, statistically speaking, is much more a matter of luck than it is sense. And it's certainly not about finding the one. If you have done that, if you have found the one, you are an incredibly fortunate person. But it's not because God had one person for you. It's because you know enough about yourself and about what it takes to have a successful, happy relationship, to make the sacrifices necessary for that to happen. The purpose of life is not designed for us by some great cosmic being. It's designed for us, it's created for us by us. We are meaning makers. That doesn't mean that we all do what's right in our own eyes. That's not it at all. Because we are bound by what society tells us is right and wrong and proper and improper. It's about being a part of a healthy, functioning community as we find meaning based on our own talents, our own passions, our own interests. Your reason for existing starts inside of you. As you love others, as you live in this world, and as you make meaning that's valuable for you.
Our closing hymn is number 396, I Know This